I was sitting at my desk, the sunlight beginning to set through my office window, casting long, warm shadows across the neatly arranged rows of papers. The daily routine of meetings and planning had already come to an end, but the feeling of restlessness that had accompanied me for days persisted like a shadow. When my cell phone vibrated, I didn't expect it to be something that would change the trajectory of my life. The message was anonymous, without a sender, just an unknown number. I hesitated before opening it. What could be so important that someone would decide to alert me about something? The content hit me like a punch in the gut. Jessica is seeing someone. Stay tuned. The words danced before my eyes, and a wave of disbelief washed over me. Jessica? The woman I shared the last 5 years with? It was difficult to imagine that she was capable of betrayal. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to shake the thought away. What I knew about Jessica was that she was loyal, caring, and dedicated. I never saw her as someone who could disappoint me like that. But the message echoed in my mind, and doubt began to creep into my heart. I decided to investigate. Over the next few days, I waited for any indication that the message was true. Jessica's behavior seemed normal, but an uneasiness was growing in me. In one of my searches, while organizing the bookshelf in the living room, I found a receipt for an expensive restaurant dated a Friday night. A name I didn't recognize was written underneath, Café Del Marche. That same night, Jessica had claimed that she had an appointment with a friend. My heart raced. The connection was undeniable. Anger and sadness began to weave together into a tight knot inside me. The image of Jessica, laughing and having fun with someone else, began to form in my mind. I needed to know the truth. The decision took shape in my heart. I would go to the restaurant. The thought was scary, but the urgency to discover the truth drove me. If it's true, I need to see them with my own eyes, I thought. That night I dressed carefully. I chose a shirt that she always liked, hoping that maybe, when she saw me, she would feel some remorse. But at the same time, a part of me longed for confrontation, a need to expose the betrayal if it was real. Upon arriving at Café Del Mar, my heart was racing, and every beat seemed to echo in my ears. The atmosphere was sophisticated, with low lights and the soft murmur of conversations around, but I was completely oblivious to what was going on around me. I walked slowly to the back of the restaurant, and then I saw them. Jessica and Mike, my best friend, were sitting at a table away, laughing. What hit me the most was the way she leaned into him, as if they were sharing intimate secrets. The touch of their hands, the complicity in their gazes, everything seemed so natural, so intimate. A chill ran down my spine, and anger boiled in my chest. I took a deep breath, trying to organize my thoughts. You can handle this, David. You need to know the truth, I told myself. With firm steps, I approached the table. The moment I sat down uninvited was like a crash amidst the silence. Jessica turned pale, and Mike, in an involuntary gesture, tried to move away. The shock was palpable, and the tension in the air could be cut with a knife. I felt adrenaline rush through my body as I just watched, waiting for Jessica to speak. The air was thick when I entered the restaurant. The soft candlelight created dancing shadows on the walls, but none of it could warm the chill that settled in my chest. I had prepared myself for this moment, but at the same time, I felt like nothing could prepare me for what I was about to discover. The atmosphere was filled with laughter and lively conversation, but all I could hear was the sound of my own heart beating. My eyes fixed on the far table where Jessica and Mike were sitting. The shock was like a punch in the stomach. She looked so beautiful, in that red dress that I always loved. But next to her was Mike, my best friend, laughing and leaning in close to her as if they had been lovers for a long time. The scene was like a horror movie, and I was trapped as an unwilling spectator. It can't be true, I muttered to myself, but the reality was undeniable. They were too close, their gestures intimate, Mike's hands caressing Jessica's. The lump in my throat tightened, and anger began to boil inside me. I took a deep breath and, with the determination of a man who had lost everything, I walked to the table. "Hi, guys," I said, trying to keep my voice steady but feeling the tension wash over me. Jessica turned pale when she saw me, as if she had seen a ghost. Mike, on the other hand, tried to adopt a relaxed smile that convinced no one. David, what are you doing here? Mike's question sounded more like an attempt to disguise guilt than real curiosity. I could ask the same thing, I replied, sitting down at the table uninvited. Jessica's gaze, which was once filled with joy, was now filled with fear. It was as if she knew the moment of truth had arrived. I didn't expect to see you here, Jessica said, trying to regain her composure. Her voice was shaking, and I realized that all the confidence she had seemed to have evaporated. Yeah, I didn't expect to come across the scene I'm seeing either. The words came out with a coldness I didn't know they had. You two having fun while I was at home thinking everything was fine? David, please let me explain, Mike began, but I stopped him with a wave of my hand. Explain what, Mike? That you're seeing my wife? That this is just a passing phase? Or are you going to try to convince me that this isn't what it seems? Anger boiled in my veins, but I fought the urge to scream, to break something. Jessica looked at me, her eyes shining with tears. David, I don't know how this happened. It was a mistake. I love you, but, Mike. Enough, I said, holding up a hand. You don't need to say anything else. Words don't mean anything now. I just want to know one thing. Did you really think I wouldn't find out? She hesitated, and silence fell. I could see the internal struggle in his gaze, but something inside me had already broken. I didn't want you to find out like this, she finally whispered, her voice full of desperation. So how did you want me to find out? With a note? Or did you expect me to be oblivious to all this? How long did you think you could fool me? Sadness mixed with anger in my heart. Mike, who until then had been quiet, decided to intervene again. David, it was a mistake. It happened once, and it will never happen again. You have to believe that. I don't need to believe anything you say, Mike. I looked at him with contempt. You were my friend. For me, this is worse than any betrayal. And there, amid the noise of the restaurant, time seemed to have stopped. The weight of truth settled between us, and I realized that nothing would ever be the same again. The life I knew, the trust one had in Jessica and Mike, it had all been shattered in an instant. It was time to go. I'm leaving, I declared, getting up from the table, and I won't look back. With that, I left them there, speechless, as the emptiness in my chest became a deep abyss. Tears streamed down Jessica's face, and the scene before me unfolded in slow motion. I watched her, that woman I loved, now reduced to a pile of regret and despair. David, please forgive me, she begged, her voice choked and full of pain. The table between us felt like an abyss, an impassable space that I didn't know if I wanted or could cross. Mike stood next to her, his expression a mixture of guilt and indignation. It was a mistake, man, he tried to play it down, but his voice sounded so weak given the gravity of the situation. It wasn't supposed to be like this. His every word hit me like a punch in the gut. The betrayal was there, naked and raw, exposed to the dinner light. I couldn't think clearly. The emotions inside me boiled in a storm of anger, sadness, and confusion. An error? I replied, my voice calm, but the tension in the air was palpable. Do you think it's just a mistake? I looked at Jessica. Her eyes were full of tears that seemed to want to escape at any moment. You cheated on me with my best friend, I said, each word a blow. This is not a mistake. It's a conscious choice. She shook her head, as if she wanted to argue, but the words failed her. I don't know what happened. I was confused, David. I never wanted to hurt you. The sincerity in his voice was undeniable, but it didn't lessen the pain I felt. How could I believe that the love we had was so fragile? Confused? I shot back. Confused is not a state that is justified when you are in a relationship. You chose to be dishonest. You chose Mike. Jessica's gaze fell away, and I could see a glimpse of embarrassment on her face. Mike tried to intervene again. David, listen, this doesn't have to end like this. We can resolve this. I can make peace. I can walk away. The anger inside me grew into an almost palpable force. How could he suggest that I should accept this situation? The betrayal was there, in every laugh shared between them, in every touch that I couldn't see. Solve? What exactly do you think can be resolved here? I stood up, the chair creaking around me. You broke the trust one had in us. There is nothing that can be done to fix this. The restaurant seemed to be watching our scene, and I felt the stares of the other customers. But at that moment, nothing mattered other than the pain that consumed me. Jessica rose to her feet as well, her hand reaching out, as if to reach for me. Please, David, don't go. I love you. It was a mistake. I promise I will never do that again. Her words echoed in my mind, but I couldn't feel the compassion she expected. The only thing I felt was a deep emptiness, a feeling that everything we had built was crumbling before me. I can't go on like this anymore, I declared, the firmness in my voice surprising me. I can't be with you anymore. The words came out as if they were an absolute truth, and the shocked expression on their faces told me they hadn't expected it. Jessica turned pale, and Mike seemed to have lost the ability to argue. I want you to find what you're looking for, but it's not me. With that, I turned and walked towards the exit, feeling the weight of the decision I had just made. The air outside was fresh, but I couldn't feel relief. Just a deep emptiness and the certainty that the life I knew had changed forever. It was an end, but also the beginning of something new. The night of the dinner still echoed in my mind, like a nightmare that I couldn't wake up from. Upon entering the house, silence enveloped me like a heavy blanket. Every object around me seemed to carry the weight of betrayal, and I felt like an intruder in my own home. The walls, which were once witnesses of laughter and happy moments, now stared at me cold and indifferent. I sat on the sofa, the lights in the room dimming a little the darkness that settled in my heart. It was hard to believe that Jessica, the woman who promised to be my partner for life, had cheated on me with Mike, my best friend. The memory of the look of shock on her face when I confronted her still made my chest tighten. She looked so vulnerable, so lost, but I couldn't bring myself to care. What I felt now was a mixture of anger and sadness, an emptiness that left me feeling helpless. I decided I needed to act. Divorce was the only path that made sense. What was left of the love I once had for Jessica? It was time to organize my life and take a step forward. I grabbed my computer and started searching for lawyers. Between clicks and pages loading, the reality of what was to come began to unfold before me. The legal implications, the division of assets. It all seemed like a cruel game to me, but it was a game I needed to play. The next day, I went to the office of a lawyer I had found online. The environment was formal, with walls covered in a neutral tone that only accentuated the seriousness of the moment. As soon as I entered, I was greeted by a middle-aged man with a serious expression and a firm handshake. David, right? Let's get straight to the point, he said, gesturing for me to sit down. Yes, I need help with the divorce, I replied, trying to hide the emotional burden that was weighing on me. The lawyer began to explain the procedures, the financial implications, and despite the pain I felt, a small part of me was revived when I heard that I was entitled to a good portion of the assets. You're in a good position, David. The faster you act, the better it will be for you. It's important that you stand firm in your decision, he advised, looking into my eyes. Those words were like a balm amid the turmoil that was going on in my mind. I could regain control of my life. After the meeting, I returned home, but the feeling of relief was short-lived. Soon, messages from Jessica started arriving. At first, I ignored it, but as time passed, her insistence became unbearable. David, please, can we talk? I just want to set the record straight, one message read, followed by another. I'm so sorry, I made a terrible mistake. The anger I felt prevented me from responding. What could I say? That there was nothing to clarify? That trust, once broken, was difficult to rebuild? And if I did that, I would only be prolonging the pain. Silence seemed the best answer. David, are you there? I heard her voice through the front door as she knocked lightly. My heart raced in my chest. What did she want now? Opening the door invited more pain and confusion. I took a deep breath and remained silent, as if my absence could communicate everything I didn't have the courage to say in words. She continued to knock, her voice now thick with desperation. David, please listen to me. I can't live like this. Her call echoed through the house, but I didn't have the strength to take a step toward her. The memory of what happened at the restaurant was still fresh in my mind, and I didn't want to relive that moment. Finally, she pulled away, and I allowed myself to breathe a sigh of relief. The day dragged on, and the loneliness that filled my heart became more and more palpable. What was once the expectation of a future with Jessica had now turned into an abyss of uncertainty and pain. I knew divorce was the right path, but the journey there felt endless. Anger burned inside me like an uncontrollable flame. Jessica and Mike's betrayal wasn't just a stab in my back. It was a blow that reverberated in every corner of my soul. I saw them together, and for a brief moment I wondered if they really thought they could have a happy future together, while I carried the pain of betrayal. But the thought of watching them thrive, while I wallowed in a sea of sadness, was unbearable. What they didn't know was that I had a plan in mind. The first thing I did was look for information about Mike's company. He was always an ambitious guy, and his career was on the rise. I learned that he was about to sign a big contract, an opportunity that could definitively boost his career. The thought that he could achieve this success made me even more determined. I needed a way to reverse the situation, to take justice into my own hands. With my heart racing, I started researching. Technology was on my side, and the network of contacts I had built over the years helped me gather information. After a few hours of searching, I got what I needed. Information about irregularities in Mike's company, details that, if disclosed, could ruin his reputation and the contract he so desired. It was a time bomb ready to explode, and I had the trigger button in my hands. I sat in front of my computer, the screen lighting my face in a tense dim light. The phone next to me felt heavy, as if weighing the responsibility of each word I was about to speak. I took a deep breath, trying to organize my thoughts. The voice of the attendant from Mike's company echoed in my mind like a mantra. You cannot hesitate. It's now or never. With almost palpable determination, I dialed the number. Your heart was pounding in your chest as the call connected. The sound of the ringing was like a drum, increasing the tension that was already consuming me. When a voice on the other end answered, butterflies came over me. Hello, this is the Green Tech office. How can I help you? The voice was clear, professional. I tried to remain calm, but hatred and sadness intertwined with every word I spoke. Hi, my name is David. I have important information about an employee named Mike. It's about a contract he's about to sign. The attendant's voice gained a new intonation, curiosity mixing with concern. What do you know about this? I waited a moment, taking deep breaths. I know he is involved in unethical practices that could compromise the company. I have evidence. If you don't investigate this, your company could face serious consequences. After a few questions, I was able to make clear what I knew. I hung up the phone with a feeling of relief and satisfaction. The power I felt was intoxicating. I had done something that could change the course of Mike and Jessica's lives. While they dreamed of a future together, I had just lit the flame of destruction beneath their feet. Over the next few days, I watched the gathering storm from afar. Rumors began to circulate. Mike became increasingly anxious, and the expression of confidence he usually displayed disappeared. In every social encounter we had, he seemed more distracted, as if a shadow hung over him. Jessica, on the other hand, was trying to stay strong, but I could see the worry in her eyes. It was as if she knew something was about to happen, but didn't know what. Every time our eyes met, there was an electricity in the air, a tension that was palpable. I knew she still loved me, but that didn't matter anymore. The revenge game was underway, and finally I had control. The day the bomb exploded was not long in coming. News of the internal investigation at Mike's company spread like wildfire. He was called into a meeting, and I couldn't help but smile as I imagined the scene. What I didn't expect was the deep feeling of emptiness that accompanied me throughout the process. Was what I was doing right? Or was I just sinking into a never-ending pit of bitterness? The answer was uncertain, but one thing was clear. I couldn't go back. Life took an unexpected turn, and with each passing day, I felt like I was finally freeing myself from the chains that bound me to a past of betrayal and disillusionment. The anonymous revelation I had made about Mike not only ruined his career, but also gave me a sense of power that I hadn't felt in a long time. I sat in my new office, decorated with a minimalist feel, a blank canvas to start over. The phone rang, and it was an unknown number. I hesitated, but answered. David? The voice on the other end was familiar, but I didn't want to believe it. It was Jessica. What do you want, Jessica? My voice sounded cold, distant. I didn't want to get involved in her emotions anymore. Please, just listen to me. I know you're hurt, but I need to tell you something important. I heard everything I needed at dinner. There is nothing more to be said. No, this is different. She insisted, almost pleadingly. I'm pregnant, David. It's Mike's. A heavy silence settled between us. I knew she wasn't lying, but the reality of what she had just said hit me like a blow. The proposal for a new job, which offered me a chance to start over, now seemed like a cruel joke. And do you think this will change anything between us? I asked, anger and sadness mixing in my voice. You destroyed our marriage, Jessica. There is no turning back. I know I've done terrible things, but this is a new beginning for us. We can try, David. I do not want to lose you. You've already lost me. What about Mike? Do you really think he will be the father this child needs? I couldn't contain the bitterness in my words. I do not know what to do. I'm desperate, she cried, and the pain in her voice was palpable. I just want you to forgive me. To forgive? He laughs without humor. You broke the trust one had in you. How can I just forget about this? Because I still love you, she shouted. Her words hit me like a wave. I looked out the window, watching the city move by. The sun was setting, and the colors of the sky seemed to reflect the whirlwind of emotions I felt. Love is not enough, Jessica. You made your choices, and now you will have to face the consequences. You can't just leave me. She was almost in despair. I can, and I will. We have to separate. That's what I want. I was firm, but inside me, a part still wondered if I was doing the right thing. David, please think carefully. His voice was full of pleading. I've thought, and your call won't change that. I'm moving on, and you should do the same. I disconnected the call, feeling a mix of relief and sadness. Tears streamed down my face, not because of her, but because I was finally freeing myself. It was time to leave the past behind and look to the future. Life offered me another chance, a new job in a distant city, and I was determined to take advantage of it. I got up, walked to the window, and took a deep breath. The horizon was lighting up with new possibilities. I had found my true happiness, even if it took time to heal the wounds. What I had to do now was look forward, leave the past in the past, and embrace what came next. The sun was setting, but I knew a new day would always come.